This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Wednesday, September 4th, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
Tough talk from Netanyahu as negotiations continue to find some way to get a ceasefire. I'm Steve Futterman.
Lawyers for former President Donald Trump expected to respond soon to a superseding indictment from Special Counsel Jack Smith. I'm Clayton Neville.
A former deputy chief of staff to New York Governor Kathy Hochul was charged with acting as an agent of the Chinese government. Julie Walker, New York.
Prosecutors are resisting an attempt by former President Donald Trump to delay his New York hush money criminal case. I'm Ed Donahue.
An ugly sell-off for stocks yesterday to start September trading. Buckle up, the experts say it's going to be bumpy. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
California town now in a state of emergency and a lawsuit targeting gun sellers. All ahead on America in the Morning. The U.S. Department of Justice has charged the leader of Hamas and 5 other members of the terror group with carrying out the October 7th massacre in Israel and attacks against Americans, including the death of an Israeli-American hostage. Steve Futterman has the latest from the Middle East.
Last night in Tel Aviv, thousands took to the streets once again to protest the policies of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, calling for a ceasefire that they believe will result in the release of the remaining hostages. Here in the U.S., the Justice Department took action on Tuesday, bringing criminal charges against Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. He is accused of directing a campaign to murder U.S. citizens and endangering U.S. security.
Hamas terrorists murdered civilians who tried to flee and those who sought refuge in bomb shelters.
Attorney General Merrick Garland.
Those defendants, armed with weapons, political support, and funding from the government of Iran and support from Hezbollah, have led Hamas's efforts to destroy the state of Israel and murder civilians in support of that aim.
At the White House, Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said American diplomats, led by Secretary of State Antony Blinken, continue efforts to find some way to at least temporarily stop the fighting.
We are working again around the clock, 24/7. This is something his team is really steadfast, making sure that they're continuing to be focused on this. And look, our teams are in constant conversation with the Israeli government on all levels on a daily basis. And I think that's important to note as well.
But in Israel, Netanyahu has not changed his aggressive tone, especially after the most recent discovery of dead hostages.
6 of our hostages, they shot them in the back of the head. That's what's changed. And now after this, we're asked to show seriousness? We're asked to make concessions? What message does this send Hamas? It says, kill more hostages.
And in Pittsburgh last night, a vigil was held to honor the 6 hostages killed. Each of their names was read.
Aide, Yerushalmi, 24. Oli Danino, 25.
I'm Steve Futterman.
Former President Trump directing his attorneys to enter a plea on his behalf regarding a tweaked indictment from Special Counsel Jack Smith. Correspondent Clayton Neville is following the case.
An indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to disenfranchise voters, and conspiring and attempting to obstruct an official proceeding.
Special Prosecutor Jack Smith has tweaked his case since the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on presidential immunity. He's still committed to going after former President Trump, though.
We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone.
Trump, of course, has been a long critic of Smith's and has said that the cases being brought against him are a form of election interference.
Deranged Jack Smith. He's a deranged human being. You take a look at that face, you say, that guy is a sick man. There's something wrong with him. Somebody said, why don't you be nice to him? I said, yeah, wouldn't matter.
Smith is prosecuting Trump for his alleged efforts to block the results of the 2020 election that Trump lost to President Biden. Now, the new indictment keeps the same charges against the former president in place. Now, though, they're targeting what he did as a candidate or a private citizen, not as a president. And it removed all language surrounding alleged efforts to install a new attorney general to investigate alleged election fraud. Trump expected to plead not guilty. His lawyers planning to appear in court tomorrow to sort out how exactly to move forward in the case. I'm Clayton Neville.
The top stories of the day are sponsored by Sleep Number. It's Sleep Number's biggest sale of the year. Save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed only at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com. The FBI says a former aide to a U.S. governor was a spy for China. We'll have that story when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back here with America in the Morning. Heavy rains continue to plague the southern plains. With today's forecast, here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
For the second day in a row, portions of western and central Texas have received heavy rain from a system that originated in the Gulf of Mexico and then moved inland. This system will continue on an eastward path today, with several showers and thunderstorms developing along it. The heaviest of the rain will shift into portions of southern and eastern Texas, into Louisiana and southern Mississippi, especially during the afternoon hours. Few of these storms could lead to some localized flooding. There will still be some scattered showers and thunderstorms through western and central parts of Texas, but not nearly as heavy as recent days. There will be more showers and thunderstorms today along the Gulf Coast as well, through portions of southern Alabama, southern Georgia, and Florida. Few of the storms in Florida could produce very heavy rainfall. Additional showers will form along the coast from South Carolina to Virginia. There will also be some scattered afternoon thunderstorms through portions of the Rockies around Wyoming and Colorado, and then eastward into Nebraska, South Dakota, and Minnesota. Few of those storms could produce gusty winds and hail. The rest of the nation will be largely dry with a decent amount of sunshine. High pressure through the Great Lakes into the northeast will allow for a comfortable afternoon with very low humidity. Temperatures this afternoon will be mostly in the 70s and 80s. Meanwhile, in the west, the heat is continuing to build in the region. Excessive heat watches and warnings have continued to expand into coastal Washington and Oregon, where highs will move into the 90s and even close to 100 in Oregon. That's the weather across America. Denver, Colorado will have a mixture of clouds and sun today with a gusty thunderstorm in the area in the afternoon and a high of 83. Fort Myers, Florida will have sun followed by clouds with a couple of drenching afternoon thunderstorms and a high of 91. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Don't forget you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. Stunning development in New York politics as a woman who worked as a top aide under two Democratic New York governors is charged by the FBI with being an agent of the Chinese government. Correspondent Julie Walker reports the subject's husband is also facing serious criminal charges.
A former deputy chief of staff to New York Governor Kathy Hochul was charged with acting as an undisclosed agent of the Chinese government. Federal prosecutors say Linda Sun was arrested Tuesday with her husband, Chris Hugh, at their $3.5 million home. Sun rose through the ranks of New York government, first working under Governor Andrew Cuomo, then Hochul, both Democrats. Prosecutors say Sun blocked Taiwan government representatives from access to high-level officials in New York at the request of China, altered state governmental messaging on issues related to the Chinese government, and attempted to facilitate a trip to China for a high-level politician. Her husband, Hugh, is charged with money laundering, conspiracy to commit bank fraud, and misuse of means of identification. Julie Walker, New York.
Rejecting his claim of presidential immunity, a federal judge in New York said no to Donald Trump's request to intervene in his hush money criminal case, spurning the former president's attempt at a move out of state court where he was convicted and is set to be sentenced in 2 weeks. Correspondent Ed Donahue has the latest.
Trump is trying to get the federal court to intervene in the state's case and possibly overturn his felony conviction. But prosecutors are okay to postpone Trump's sentencing on September 18th. Prosecutors did urge Judge Juan Merchan not to delay his rulings on two key defense requests: Trump's call to delay sentencing until after the November election and his attempt to overturn the verdict and dismiss the case in the wake of the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity. A decision on delaying sentencing is expected soon. Merchan says he will rule in about 2 weeks on the motion to overturn the verdict. Trump was convicted of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records to conceal a hush money payment to porn actor Stormy Daniels. Trump denied her claim and said he did nothing wrong. I'm Ed Donahue.
U.S. stock market takes a nosedive. We'll have that when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Back with you now. This is America in the Morning. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, always putting clients' interests first. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. With the Wednesday edition, here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street opens this morning after an ugly start to September trading yesterday. August was a winning month for the major averages. We had that nice record high for the Dow last Friday, but some weaker manufacturing data spooked investors. The Dow tanked 600 points yesterday. The S&P 500 index down more than 100. The Nasdaq plunged more than 500 points. Some investors are back to thinking that the economy might be slowing too fast.
Trying to fit all the weakness that we are expected to see in September into a single day. The decline today in the S&P 500 has taken us exactly back into the range of August 15th. And I don't see it as really a game changer as much as a relapse of the same kinds of concerns we were concerned with a while ago.
CNBC's Mike Santoli. Now, NVIDIA shares plunged almost 10% yesterday, dragging a basket of chip stocks down. It was the worst day since March of 2020 for that basket. Lots of investors, though, look to buy the dips.
I'm buying. And I think you want to be adding to stocks on weakness. September should be likely a little bit volatile, and I think you want to use that weakness to be adding.
Hightower's Stephanie Link on CNBC. The major averages are all still higher for the year, though. The S&P 500 index is up 15%. Oil is at its lowest since last January. U.S. crude hitting an intraday low of $70.10 a barrel yesterday. AAA says Americans are paying 50 cents less this morning at the pump than they were a year ago for a gallon of regular gas.
And this summer for Hollywood, not all that great.
Not as good as last year. The summer box office was softer, even with a number of blockbusters like Disney Marvel's Deadpool and Wolverine.
I could tell you have a sort of don't get too close, I'll only break your heart vibe going here.
Deadpool is the number one money-making R-rated movie of all time. It's made more than $600 million domestically so far. ComScore says the total summer movie take was more than $3.5 billion, but that was down 10% from the summer of 23. Still to come this year, though, to help the year's numbers, the Beetlejuice movie, a new Transformers film, the next Joker movie, a live-action version of The Lion King, Gladiator 2, Moana 2, and Wicked. On today's watch list, we get earnings from Dick's Sporting Goods and Dollar Tree. The JOLTS report will be out on job openings and labor turnover. We get factory orders for July. The latest car sales numbers will be out. The Beige Book comes out this afternoon, a summary of U.S. economic conditions. And Google's new Pixel 9 phones are available to buy today.
Thank you, CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. Lawsuits targeted at gun shops when America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. Mistrial declared after a jury deadlocks in the rape case of a former New Hampshire Youth Center worker. Following details in the case, correspondent Norman Hall.
After a 4-day trial and deliberations that stretched over 3 days, a mistrial was declared Tuesday in the first criminal trial linked to New Hampshire's sprawling child abuse scandal. A jury deadlocked in the case of former youth detention facility staffer Victor Malavet, who was charged with raping a teenage girl. Malavet was one of 9 men charged in a 5-year-old investigation into abuse allegations at the Sununu Youth Services Center in Manchester. Malavet's lawyers say the teen made up the allegations to get money from a lawsuit. She is among more than 1,100 former residents of youth facilities who are suing the state over abuse allegations spanning 6 decades. I'm Norman Hall.
Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a state of emergency for the town of Rancho Palos Verdes following a series of powerful landslides, freeing up California resources to aid in their response. 140 homes in the Portuguese Bend community had their electrical service turned off and evacuation notices sent out. Some areas of the town north of Los Angeles were seeing land movement of 1 foot per week. A lawsuit is purportedly set to hit the courts, filed against gun shops that sold weapons that were illegally trafficked into Washington, D.C. Correspondent Julie reports.
3 gun shops that sold nearly 3 dozen firearms to a man who trafficked the weapons in and around Washington, D.C. are facing a new lawsuit jointly filed by attorneys general for Maryland and the nation's capital. At least 9 of those guns have now been found at crime scenes, as well as with people wanted on warrants for violent offenses. Many of the others are still unaccounted for. Washington, D.C. has struggled with gun violence in recent years. The nation's capital saw its highest number of homicides in more than 3 decades last year, and more than 90% of those were carried out with firearms. The suit seeks unspecified damages and court action to halt any further straw purchases. The lawsuit is the first to be filed jointly and comes as cities and states around the country file civil suits against gun shops. Julie, Washington.
America in the Morning for Wednesday, September 4th, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
The Justice Department announced criminal charges against Hamas
and endanger the security of the United States.
I'm Norman Hall.
Demonstrations back on at Columbia University as classes begin. I'm Clayton Neville.
Former President Trump and Vice President Harris get ready for next week's debate by visiting battleground states this week. I'm John Stolness.
Elizabeth Warren's challenger and an update on a parade shooting in New York.
2024's endless summer has been especially hot in Phoenix. I'm Julie.
China attempts social media influence in the elections. I'm tech correspondent Chuck Palm.
Singer and actor James Darren has died at the age of 88. I'm Archie Zaraletta with a look at his career.
Back after these messages. This is America in the Morning. High temps continue for some. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
In the west, the heat is continuing to build into the region. Excessive heat watches and warnings have continued to expand into coastal Washington and Oregon, where highs will move into the 90s and even 100s in Oregon and southern Washington. Farther south, afternoon temperatures in the California valleys into southern Nevada and Arizona will easily reach into the 90s, with many areas over 100 or even 110. This heat will continue to build tomorrow as well before slowly dropping again later this week into the weekend. High pressure through the Great Lakes into the northeast will allow for another comfortable afternoon with very low humidity, though it will be a little bit warmer in the afternoon with temperatures mostly in the 70s and 80s and a few 90-degree readings in parts of Nebraska and western Kansas. Heading back to the south for the second day in a row, portions of western and central Texas received heavy rain from a system that originated in the Gulf and then moved inland. This system will continue on an eastward path today, with several showers and thunderstorms developing along it. The heaviest of the rain will shift into portions of southern and eastern Texas, into Louisiana and southern Mississippi, especially during the afternoon hours. A few of the storms could lead to localized flooding. There are still some scattered showers and thunderstorms through western and central parts of Texas, but not nearly as heavy as recent days. There will be some showers and thunderstorms today along the Gulf Coast as well, through southern Alabama into southern Georgia and Florida. A few of the storms in Florida could produce very heavy rainfall. Additional showers and thunderstorms will form along the South Carolina coast into Virginia. There will be some scattered afternoon thunderstorms as well as portions of the Rockies around Wyoming into Colorado, eastward to Nebraska, South Dakota, and Minnesota. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. 6 senior leaders of Hamas were charged by the U.S. Department of Justice with terrorism against the United States and other crimes related to the October 7th attack against Israel that also killed Americans. Correspondent Norman Hall has the latest.
The Justice Department unsealed charges against Yahya Sinwar and other senior leaders of Hamas for financing and directing a decades-long campaign to murder American citizens and endanger the security of the United States.
The Justice Department announced criminal charges against Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar and other senior militants in connection with the October 7, 2023 rampage in Israel.
This weekend, we learned that Hamas murdered 6 more hostages, including Hirsch Goldberg Poland, a 23-year-old Israeli American. We are investigating Hirsch's murder and each and every one of the brutal murders of Americans as acts of terrorism. We will continue to support the whole of government effort to bring the Americans still being held hostage home.
The charges mark the first effort by American law enforcement to formally call out the masterminds of the attack. The criminal complaint filed in federal court in New York City includes charges of conspiracy to murder U.S. nationals. It also accuses Iran and Lebanon's Hezbollah of providing financial support and weapons that were used in the attack.
As outlined in our complaint, those defendants, armed with weapons, political support, and funding from the government of Iran and support from Hezbollah, have led Hamas's efforts to destroy the state of Israel and murder civilians in support of that aim.
The impact of the case may be mostly symbolic, given that Sinwar is believed to be in hiding, and at least 2 of the other defendants are thought to have been killed.
The charges unsealed today are just one part of our effort to target every aspect of Hamas's operations. These actions will not be our last.
I'm Norman Hall.
GOP leaders are vowing action against colleges and universities if protests against Israel erupt like they did in the spring. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise told Fox News that if universities won't hold protesters accountable, Congress will. Meanwhile, in New York, anti-Israel protesters defaced property and held marches at Columbia University as the fall semester begins, and the first day of classes also led to arrests. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
Picking up where they left off as protesters demand officials at Columbia divest financial ties with any groups or companies linked to Israel. Dozens of demonstrators chanted and held signs calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Columbia Students for Justice in Palestine organized the demonstration and said in a statement that the group refuses to live in a world where mass murder of Palestinians is normal or profitable. It continued Columbia University's complicit in genocide. This is Jewish students on campus are bothered.
At the end of the last semester, we couldn't even go to class. Jewish students were targeted and harassed by our classmates and by unaffiliated protesters as well. But nobody was able to go to class. These issues aren't just affecting Jewish and Israeli students anymore. They're affecting everyone.
Eden Yedigar spoke with News Nation.
I walked through what was a pretty large picket in front of the main entrance to campus, and students were handing out flyers that said, quote, "We will emerge upon you from where you least expect it." That's a quote from the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, And if that's not threatening disruption and threatening violence potentially, I don't know what is. So I'm very concerned that this year will be no better than the last.
The protests come a month after the resignation of Columbia's former president, who was highly criticized over her handling of anti-Semitism on campus. A statue at Columbia yesterday was splashed with red paint as demonstrators insist that the school has blood on its hands. Security is tight there. Guards were placed at every entrance to both Columbia and Barnard across the street. All students required to scan their ID to get on campus. I'm Clayton Neville.
Neither former President Donald Trump nor Vice President Kamala Harris was on the campaign trail Tuesday, and their running mates were silent too. But expect a flurry of activity over the next few days ahead of next week's highly anticipated debate between the two candidates. America in the Morning's John Stolness is following the campaigns.
The vice president is set to unveil some new economic policies in a speech in New Hampshire later today, specifically increasing a deduction for expenses related to a new small business's first year of operations from $5,000 to $50,000. Speaking of the Granite State, a top Trump campaign volunteer has reportedly quit over differing beliefs of Trump's chances of winning in that state. The former vice chair of Trump's efforts in Massachusetts, Tom Mountain, says Trump cannot win in New Hampshire and should redirect resources elsewhere. The campaign says they believe the state is still very much in play. Trump will be in Pennsylvania tonight, visiting Harrisburg for a town hall on Fox News with Sean Hannity. Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, attends a Turning Point Action event in Mesa, Arizona. Harris's running mate, Governor Tim Walz, will also be in the Keystone State later today. The Trump campaign continues to take heat over a photo op and shoving incident between a campaign staffer and an employee at Arlington National Cemetery last week. Jim McCain, the youngest son of former Republican Senator John McCain, says the incident at Arlington reflects the former president's attitude towards veterans and some mean comments he had towards his father years ago.
I've never forgotten it. And, to remind everyone, John McCain was my father as well. And, he was the guy I went to when I skinned my knee, So to hear those things said about him, I can never forgive. The one thing about John McCain is that he cared about his country, and he lived his life that way.
In Philadelphia this week, signs inside bus station terminals feature an animated photo of Kamala Harris's likeness in an Eagles helmet, looking very much like an ad portraying the organization as officially endorsing Harris. A statement by the team says they are not responsible for the ads and are not endorsing any candidate. And the Harris campaign is teaming up with the Democratic National Committee for a $25 million spending spree to support down-ballot Democrats, a larger investment than they've made in recent years for that effort. I'm John Stolness.
When we return on America in the Morning, Spamiflage, U.S. election interference from the Chinese, when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. I'm John Trout. Republicans have made their choice in Massachusetts as attorney John Deaton on a three-way GOP primary to face off against Senator Elizabeth Warren in November. Deaton is a former United States Marine and a cryptocurrency attorney. He's agreed to 2 debates with Warren in October, who is running for her 3rd term in office. Warren, who's popular in Massachusetts, won her last election in 2018 with over 60% of the vote. Deaton, who moved to the Bay State from Rhode Island last year, has focused on the migrant crisis and what he called retiring Warren from the United States Senate. There are concerns that not enough was done to prevent a shooting at a popular New York City parade that has now claimed 1 life. Correspondent Julie Walker reports police are looking for a gunman who killed 1 and shot 4 others at the West Indian parade that hundreds of thousands of people attended.
A shooter opens fire at the West Indian Day Parade in Brooklyn Monday afternoon. New York City police say a 25-year-old is dead and 4 others, ranging in age from 16 to 69, were also shot. Police call it a targeted shooting. Mayor Eric Adams.
We were proactive. This was a well-executed plan. And so some people would say, okay, well, 5 people were shot. Let's be clear. 1 nut shot 5 people.
The mayor dismissing any suggestion that the parade should be canceled.
How do you stop a nut from taking a gun, shooting into a crowd of 5 people? We were proactive. 25 guns removed off the street just in those small days. 25 guns. So no telling how many shootings we prevented.
He says pre-parade during the Juve celebration, they took 25 guns off the street. Julie Walker, New York.
To say it's been a hot summer in the Southwest is an understatement. Las Vegas set a record averaging over 96 degrees this summer, shattering the old Sin City record by nearly 3 degrees. And then there's Phoenix, where correspondent Haya Panjwani reports the Valley of the Sun has just had its 100th 100-plus degree weather day.
It's always hot this time of year in central Arizona, but 2024's endless summer has been especially hot in Phoenix.
Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport just accumulated their 100th day of 100 degrees or better.
The city hit its 100th straight day with at least 100-degree temperatures. That's long since shattered the record of 76 days in a row set back in 1993. The temperature hit 102 in Phoenix on May 27th and has made it to triple digits every day since. It doesn't look like a break is coming anytime soon.
We will typically see temperatures above 100 degrees for much of the summer, But usually there's a few days in the summer where we have a lot of clouds and a lot of rain that keep us below 100 degrees. This year we did not see that day or any of those days, as it's been quite dry in the metro area.
Mark O'Malley with the National Weather Service in Phoenix explains what caused this persistent heat.
We had an area of high pressure that was fairly strong that set up over the region this year, and it just hung over the region. The days that we did have thunderstorms, they weren't particularly widespread.
Unseasonably high September temperatures are expected this week across the western United States. I'm Haya Panjwani.
Chinese-linked hackers are trying to drum up election discontent on social media, but don't seem to favor one candidate or the other. With more on what's being called spamouflage, here's Chuck Palm with today's Tech Report.
A Chinese social media influence operation has been put into effect and is actively impersonating U.S. voters and denigrating politicians. The state-linked campaign known as Spamouflage or Dragon Bridge has pursued a mixture of spam and targeted propaganda on the internet. Jack Stubbs, manager of Graphica, the research team who first reported about Spamouflage, says they have become more aggressive in efforts to infiltrate and sway U.S. political conversations. He also said this matters because it shows Chinese influence operations are targeting the U.S. and are evolving. By using multiple accounts on X, an operative creates memes that labeled Trump a fraud and showing him in an orange prison uniform, while also calling Biden a coward. Liu Pingyu, a spokesperson for China's embassy in Washington, said, "China has no intention and will not interfere in U.S. elections, and we hope that the U.S. will not make an issue of China in the election." Tell us your thoughts at allthetoptech.tech. I'm Chuck Palm.
Robert Workman has your check of midweek sports.
USA at the U.S. Open Tuesday. Quarterfinal wins for 13-seed Emma Navarro, 12-seed Taylor Fritz, and number 20 Francis Tiafoe. Those latter two set to meet in the men's semifinals on Friday. That means one of them will play for the title on Sunday. Navarro will face 2-seed Aryna Sabalenka in tomorrow's women's semis, and 6-seed Jessica Pegula plays number 1 Iga Swiatek in the last of the quarters tonight, so there's a chance of an All-American women's final on Saturday. Baseball, Wyatt Langford belted a game-ending grand slam as the Rangers came back to top the Yankees 7-4. Orioles whitewashed the White Sox 9-0. Cade Povich and the Mauries held them to 6 hits. Chicago has dropped 12 straight. Baltimore is back on top of the American League standings. Dodgers got a 3-run blast from Mookie Betts in the 10th inning to beat the Angels. Cardinals outlasted the Brewers in 12 innings. Diamondbacks held off the Giants for their 7th consecutive road win. A's got a walk-off over the Mariners. Phillies rallied from down 5 to shade the Blue Jays. Kyle Schwarber hit 3 dingers for the second time this year, including a leadoff shot and the go-ahead 3-run rocket in the 9th, 6 RBI in all. Pirates blanked the Cubs. Paul Skeens and the Skeeters with a 5-hitter. Braves shut out the Rockies. Chris Sale and the Receipts scattered 6 hits to give the lefty his league-leading 16th win. Guardians ripped the Royals. KC has lost 7 in a row. Mets have won 6 straight after their victory over the Red Sox. Rays got by the Twins, and the Nationals mashed the Marlins. That's Wednesday Sports.
Thank you, Robert. When we return on America in the Morning, music to your ears, just not at a campaign rally. After these messages. Welcome back here with America in the Morning. He was a teenage heartthrob in the 50s who launched a successful singing and acting career. Entertainment correspondent Margie Zaraletta reports on the death of James Darren.
James Darren was able to build on his teen idol image as Moondoggie in the Gidget movies for a singing career, with 2 top 10 hits in the 1960s, Goodbye Cruel World and Her Royal Majesty.
I'm just having a ball singing, and I don't really have eyes to do anything else. I'm just thinking I'm going to just enjoy this as long as I can, and if I could sing for the next whatever years, I'll do it.
Darren later starred in the 60s sci-fi show The Time Tunnel, and he played a recurring character on the 80s show T.J. Hooker, which is where he first tried directing. He turned that into a successful career, directing shows like Walker, Texas Ranger and Melrose Place.
Having done Gidget and appealed to that entire generation, and then doing a series called The Time Tunnel and appealing to another group of people, doing T.J. Hooker, and then doing Star Trek, which again is an entirely new and different group of people. So I've been lucky that I built these fan bases in all these different areas.
Darren said in a 2001 interview he liked quality projects.
I've spent my entire career not wanting to do trash. I have too much pride to do something that would embarrass me.
I'm Archie Zaraletta.
Judge says a popular song cannot be played anymore at Donald Trump rallies. Kevin Carr has that story.
On Tuesday in Atlanta, a judge granted a preliminary injunction against the Donald Trump campaign prohibiting the use of "Hold On, I'm Coming." The family of Isaac Hayes, who co-wrote the song, has removed it from political use in licensing. Hayes' son, Isaac Hayes III, spoke outside the courtroom.
After that license has been terminated by BMI, there's any opportunity to return to use the song. And that was told to him over 100 days ago, and he continued to use the song. So there's no coming back from using the song.
Trump's lawyers insist they have the rights to use the song. However, on Monday, Hayes shared a letter from June requesting the Trump campaign not use it. Until the case can make its way through the courts, the judge prohibited the song's use, but did not require removal of existing videos. Hayes' family lawyer, James Walker, also spoke outside the courtroom.
Totally not politically motivated.
I've been doing these cases for almost 30 years. He has shut Donald Trump down to get a preliminary injunction on Donald Trump. That is an unheard of order by a court.
Multiple artists refused to grant Trump music rights. Beyonce recently issued a cease and desist letter regarding her song Freedom. The Foo Fighters threatened legal action after Trump introduced RFK Jr. to their anthem My Hero. And just last week, Swedish pop group ABBA sent a request to the Trump campaign to stop using their music after reports of Winner Takes It All, Money, 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 and Dancing Queen were played at rallies. I'm Kevin Carr.
America in the Morning for Wednesday, September 4th, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.